welcome back to One on One with Mr. U. Of course, I'm your host, Mr. U, in studio with us, Dr. Troy Hall, talent retention expert, speaker internationally. The man's won awards, best-selling author, educator. The man is a renaissance man. He does a whole bunch of stuff. Dr. Troy's in the house. Good to have you here, sir. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. And if I were any better, Mr. U, I'd be Dr. T.
Dr. T, you are Dr. T. Good to have you here, man. Can't wait to have a convo with you. I was on your show. You have a fantastic podcast. At some point, we should share about that a little bit later on. But customarily, I ask a guest to come in and share about their upbringing a little bit, man. What we like for Dr. Troy before he was a doctor. What was that to get from? How did you get from there to where you were then to where you are now? Kind of briefly share the journey a little bit if you can.
Well, the first thing I'll do is just share a little bit about something about me that most people don't know. And that is we have a multi-generational home. So our daughter, husband, and 4 children live on one side. My wife and I live on the other. I'm a simple man of faith, married my high school sweetheart in 1977. We have 2 children, 6 grandchildren. And those grandchildren go in ages from 4 to 24. And last September, I had the honor of marrying our oldest grandson.
Wow, I'm impressed.
Yeah,
me and you are matching on the grandchildren part. The age is a little bit different, but we in the same place, so it's a tight heat going on there. But good to hear this, man. I love this. All right, so what would you say is kind of a turning point in your life that got you from there to here? What if you could detect at least one thing? What do you think that was?
My salvation.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it was a turning point. Yeah. So it was the time when I decided that I couldn't do it all by myself, and really looked for spiritual help to make my journey more complete. And everything sort of began to fall in place. It's never perfect. And certainly the road, even though the road may be laid out perfectly for you, we don't always follow it perfectly. So, but you asked for the turning point. That was it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Often I hear the answers, or they kind of vary from guest to guest. With people who have gone through hard things and just kind of built a resilience, and now they kind of live it. It's become a cause and a movement in their life and stuff. That's kind of where I was going with that. But in regards to what you do, and you do a lot of things, and we're going to try to spend as much of this 30 minutes getting into all that you do and still flesh out who you are as a person, because that's really important to me that we kind of get into who you are. So I love what you shared earlier about your house being not divided, but segmented, if you will. With your family on one side. We've experienced that without the segmentation. It was just a big blend. You know what I'm saying? It's not easy. We had 6 grandkids all in the house at the same time. So you could imagine we had to use 2 vehicles to go everywhere, which is not great as far as gas mileage goes. So interesting situation you got going on here. But I'd love to hear some more about your journey. If I was to ask you right now, what is something about your leadership journey that most disappoints you? I'm asking that because we always talk about the highlights and all the things that sound good, the highlight reels, the slam dunks, and the 400 home runs. But the stuff that got us to those places is what brings value, I think, to our listeners. So if you can highlight 1 or 2 things along your leadership journey personally that you think were disappointing, maybe it's the human condition, perhaps, or just something that you saw that just hasn't culminated, what would you say there?
So I have 2 individuals that have been extremely influential in my leadership journey. One of them was my mom, Fanny. And so we'll talk about Fanny. And the other, I want to give credit to my wife, Vicky, who continues to support me and keeps me humble. So I always have the humble button on when I'm talking with her. But I'll go back to my mom, Fanny. So influential. As a matter of fact, I wrote a book about her. It's called Fanny Rules, A Mother's Leadership Lessons That Never Grow Old. So kind of tell you the story and how that happened. When I was 12 years old, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. So 50 some years ago, when a person was diagnosed with breast cancer, and compound with the fact that we lived in a small rural town in West Virginia, the prognosis was typically death. in that community, there was limited education experiences, medical experiences. Were 45 to 50 minutes away from where we lived. Poor economic conditions. The largest employer was several miles away. Something that would require a car ride, nothing that you would be able to get to from public transportation. So when you have those types of situations and things going on, it certainly makes an impact in your life. Uh, During the time that my mom had her operation, it was my responsibility to take care of the house and to make sure my dad got all of his lunch packed and everything ready to send him out the door in the morning.
Yeah.
So that was the program that I followed. And I spent a lot of time after mom's operation helping her recover, changing her bandages, helping her get to the restroom, cooking, feeding. She actually organized the surgery so that it would be during the time that I was in between school years, so I could devote time to her from June, July, and most of August, because at that time we didn't start school until after Labor Day, and we ended school sometime around Labor Day. I'm sorry,
Memorial Day?
yeah, Memorial
Memorial?
Day, all the way up to Labor Day. So that was my job, and so prior to that, she taught me how to clean, how to cook, how to do a grocery list, how to write checks, how to, keep things moving when she wasn't going to be there or be able to make that happen. So I just also will clarify early on is I have a great relationship with my dad. It's just that when you asked me for the leadership influencers, that's why mom came to mind.
Oh, yeah.
Just like my
Sure.
brother said to me, my brother is 3 years younger, and they had sent my brother to Friends. So he stayed the entire summer with Friends while I stayed there and took care of the house and things. Um, but when I told him I was writing the book about mom, he says, "Well, don't forget about dad." And I said, "No," I said, "Dad, there's a little chapter in there for dad, but the whole star of the show is mom." And so from that, mom would teach me all sorts of bedside messaging. One of the things she said to me was that my character would always be defined by the choices I make, not the circumstances I'd find myself in. She said, "We were poor by circumstance, not by choice. I have cancer by circumstance, not by choice. You can get out of this town by choice,
Oh, yeah.
not stay by circumstance."
Yeah, I love it.
So she instilled in me that confidence that I could do things that maybe I never thought I could, which, of course, now with the PhD, I've learned what the psychological and the philosophical viewpoints of what that means and how that operates inside our brain. But at that time, I was getting information from a woman who was basically 98 pounds soaking wet, who had a high school education, but um, she had a very strong education when it came to her faith and how her faith impacted me. So the story doesn't end there. She actually survived 43 years from that awful summer. But towards the last 5, 6 years of her life, she came down with dementia and Parkinson's disease. And as we know, that killer takes away your memories and your motor skills, and you get to a point where you're no longer functioning. I was fortunate enough, along with the support of my wife, Vicki, another reason why she is at the top of that list, to support my mom and dad. They came and lived with us for 5 years before both of them eventually passed away. Because mom's memories were going and she didn't have them anymore, wasn't so influential to tell our grandchildren some of these great stories of their grandma. And we wanted them to know them. So I thought, I'll write a book. So I did. I came up with 9 rules that Fanny would tell us. And then I wrapped 31 teachable moments around those 9 rules. And the really cool thing about the book is we donated all of our proceeds of the book to Alzheimer's research in South Carolina. And we have been able to donate over $25,000 to the Alzheimer's Association. So the book was a bestseller. It did really well in areas of humor and business professional business, something. I forget the category now, but
No,
mom, of course, would have been very embarrassed to know that I wrote a book specifically about her, and she would have scolded me quite well had she been around for that. But her memory gets a chance to live on, even though she lost those memories that couldn't live with her. Her memory lives on. So that's
commendable.
how I would say that. And then to just follow up with my wife, and then you can ask me some more questions.
No worries. This is good.
So basically, I really was able to earn both my MBA and my PhD as working full time. But that wouldn't have happened without the support of Vicki. Vicki was with me every step of the way. She helped me with assignments by quizzing me for tests before I would take them, by helping me get some research material.
That's amazing.
Again, some of that was before we had access to Google and the internet, which is so much easier to get information today. A lot of it was going to libraries and finding books and checking them out and, copying, information so that I could then read it and use it. Took care of a lot of home responsibilities that I would normally do. Certainly when you pursue a PhD, it's a little more aggressive than your MBA, in that you are spending about 35 to 36 hours a week on top of whatever you're doing to go through that degree program. And so I don't think I would have been able to do it without Vicki, or I wouldn't have wanted to have done it without her. So those are the two women who were influential, not only in my life, but also in my leadership journey.
No, I love it, man. You and I have shared our stories about the ugly effects of dementia and Alzheimer's, and we've kind of seen it. I shared my story with you, I believe. I don't know if it was on your show or if it was offline. I can't really recall, but we talking about how rough it was that she couldn't. Me and my grandma was like best friends, so it was wild that she didn't remember me. It was like, can't believe it. I wanted to go in there and try to shake up.
Yeah.
How can you forget me? We were like, we used to watch wrestling together and have snacks together and drink 7-Up together. We were best friends. How could you forget me? And so that was a really, really rough one. I'd love for you to just share it briefly if you don't mind. I'm gonna move on to some other things that I think are interesting about your life. But how did you handle that part? Because you can't make somebody remember. So what did you do to not only maintain your own sanity in that situation, but also be able to make the situation not so tense, not so scary for the person? How'd you handle that?
So interesting that you asked that, but for me, it was always about mom. So the focus was on mom. So part of transformational leadership is focusing on the needs of others before self. So it's not a martyrism. You're not simply saying, look, you're never going to take care of yourself. In many cases, you have to take care of yourself or you can take care of someone else, which is why in an airplane, they tell you to put your mask on first.
Right.
But, getting past that, how we dealt with it was just that I focused everything on mom's comfort. Everything was on for her. It wasn't about me at all. It didn't matter whether she remembered me or not. I remembered her. And so one of the stories that I've written, which is part of the epilogue in the book, was a time when I was sitting with her, and you could tell when she would go in and out of memory in those early stages, because you could see it in the pupils of her eyes. You could see the way they would dilate, see the way they'll look, whether she was looking empty or whether she was engaged in looking at you. And we were watching television together and sitting beside her. And during one of the commercials, she leaned over to me and she says, "Who are you?" And I looked at her and I smiled and I said, "Well, I'm that good looking man that lives upstairs." She said, "I thought I recognized you." And, that's what you go with. You go with that. It was always, we had a little joke. We called it conversation roulette. We never knew exactly what conversation was going to happen, how much of it she would remember. Times when she would go back to it, there would be, and I'd go along with it. I just played along. I guess I had a good childhood of imagination. Got lots of stories about that I could tell you later. Yeah. But she would look out the window and she would see things and she goes, "What are those people over there doing? They've got cloaks on, or they've got hood on, or they got something, or they're carrying some tools." And I would look out the window and I said, well, Mom, tell me exactly where you're seeing them. She says, that house over there. I see them in the yard in that house. And I went, oh, those people. Oh, yeah, I got that. I said, I think they're fine. Of course, there was never anybody there. But the point is, what I learned is it's not about me making her remember. That's not a possibility. It
Right.
There's no point in coming into the room and saying, okay, tell me who you are, remind me who I am. I mean, it's just so stressful. We saw that in her decline. We used to take her out to dinner, and she would have a good time when she would go out to eat, and she'd look around and things. But then as the disease wore on, she became more intense from the synthesization that was happening with everything that was going on around her, and it was too much. And my dad, who was perfectly fine with his mental capacities, he had macular degeneration, meaning that the pupils of his eyes were eventually going blind. It was sort of like, and so I had to say to him, I go, Dad, we can't go out for Mom anymore, but we're going to go out with you. So, of course, we set up friends who would come over and sit with Mom, and we would take Dad and we would go out to eat. And of course, it wouldn't be the same thing because Mom was missing, but it was still important for us to make sure that he didn't suffer as a result of what Mom was going through, and that we could all then be focused on Mom because we're all being, some of our needs are all being met along the way. We were fortunate enough, and again, for my wife to support my mom and dad and love on them. And to some degree, she says today that she feels like she had a closer connection to them than she does with her own parents.
Wow.
But some of that can happen through that intensity of that situation and,
Sure.
and that caring. We were fortunate enough to also be able to have aides who were able to come in based on mom and dad's income. They had some resources that were available to them, and so we utilized those resources. Plus, there were things that Vicki and I were committed to doing to make sure that they had someone who would sit with them during the day when we were working or doing what we were doing, that they would make sure that Mom was properly bathed and that their space was tidied as much as could be, and giving Dad somebody to talk to since Mom became nonverbal there at the later part of her life. So that's
Thank you for
that's
sharing
kind of
that.
how we dealt with it.
That's really good. We have a little bit of time left. I want to go ahead and get into some other things. Now, your podcast is fantastic.
Thanks.
It's I really enjoy myself being on there. I love the premise of it. I'd love for you to share this kind of a two-part question. One, kind of share how that got started. I guess it's a three-part question because how you got started, how you've grown from it as a host, because podcast hosts do grow from their own work, believe it or not. And what was your moment?
Okay. So our podcast is called Conversations with Cohesive Leaders. It was specifically designed to mentor through mistakes and mishaps to those individuals in an organization who are dissatisfied with their training and development, or they're being passed over for promotion with no plan to be successful. Ben and I were thinking about doing a podcast, and I also then thought about all the things that I didn't like about a podcast that I didn't want to do. I don't want to have to worry about the recording. I don't want to have to worry about doing edits. I didn't want to have to worry about this because I've hosted podcasts before. I've hosted a radio show. I've done all that stuff. We've had to go back and sometimes do retakes and get it all ready. And I was no, we're just going to go with it. And I said the easiest thing we'll do is do a podcast around mistakes. And so we thought about what we would call it, and tended to just be like, wow, that sounds like an interesting name. People would be interested in what's what would that be like? And then we came up with a very simple concept, and it was inviting a guest who would share an experience with us. And it'd be something personal that related to them. It wasn't about, let me tell you how I'm going to improve my business, or let me tell you the next great scheme that will earn $1 million. It was just being real, saying, this is where I may have messed up, and I'm going to share that with you openly. So I'm going to be very transparent about it. So share your experience. And then we ask, well, what did it cost you? What did that experience cost you? And then what did you do to make sure that you do not have that experience again? And it was all of this is really wrapped around the fact that many of these individuals who are listening to our podcast and that we help through our Becoming a Cohesive Leader program and community are individuals who sometimes fear that a mistake is a complete derailing of their career, derailing of their life. And it's only an experience is what it is. And to some degrees can be related to the circumstance. And I'm going to quote Fanny again. And Fanny would tell me that it's not the successes or failures that shape your life, it's how you handle them. So know that you can recover from any experience. I also, some of my other teachings that go along with it are things that say you can't be a victor of your future if you're held captive by your past. Mom would say, why are you thinking about that? Why are you worrying about what you already did? She says, you can't change that. She says, what you can impact is what you're going to do next and what you'll do tomorrow. So again, building all of those leadership pieces, the context, the depth of that said, this conversations with cohesive leaders was really going to be the right thing. And it all stems from our Cohesion Culture programs that we offer to organizations and to employees and to consumers. So everything just built upon all of that. My PhD is in global leadership and entrepreneurship. My dissertation was in group dynamics with an emphasis on cohesion. And so what we do is help infuse cohesion into cultures, whether it be through their strategic alliance and strategic activities, through their leadership, or through specific coaching. It all kind of comes together. So the podcast is just another product of our Cohesion Culture programs.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And what was your moment? I might have missed that one.
Well, I've had many experiences, but the one that I shared as our what we call ground zero was a time when I was in a corporate world and I was listening to the leader provide some information, and I ended up finding myself being distracted by some folks around me who weren't quite as positive, who were being negative and thinking negatively, and I got myself associated in that way. And fortunately, I had a good mentor who reminded me that I show up every place, and even though I may not think others are looking, there's always somebody paying attention. And if not, then you should act like somebody is paying attention. So my moment was learning from that experience, and it cost me potential for reputation, potential for advancement, because I could have been labeled as a naysayer within an organization when in fact I wasn't really that negative, but I was just blending in with their comments, their snide little remarks that they would say out of the side of their mouth. And my boss reminded me, or that in this case the mentor reminded me, that I should save those side comments for a private time, not make them in a public setting. Reminded me about in that reputation that you have one chance to make a good first impression. You very rarely get a chance to make a second first impression. So that was my experience. And so what do I do to make sure that I don't do that again? Well, I pay attention to my surroundings. I've studied Goleman's theory on emotional intelligence, and I have practiced self-awareness and self-regard, social regulation, social awareness, so I can pay attention to what my emotions are and the emotions of others. And so my goal as a leader is never to allow my emotions to supersede someone else's or to incite others as a result of my emotional experience at the moment. And to pay attention to what's happening in a room. I can pretty much read a room now when I come into it to determine how things are going, and maybe a little bit of interaction with folks, and not to the point where I become a judge or jury, but just enough to give me the insight that I might need to tread differently or pay attention to more of the conversation, to be sensitive to the individual and maybe what might be happening with them. So all of that has wrapped up into me coming up with a very important mantra in life as far as my leadership is concerned, and that is to be teachable. That I've learned that if I can be teachable, then these other attributes all work together. So I can have compassion, and I can extend grace. I can have humility and seek the truth. I can be authentic. I can be a peacemaker. But if I'm not teachable, these items don't work as well in tandem. They can still work, but they don't get the same impact as when they're working, because when you are teachable, then you are humble. When you are teachable, you seek the truth. When you are teachable, you are thinking about peace, not about creating war. You're authentic in your pursuit of the education. And with that, being teachable says, I have to be able to understand others and what they're doing, which allows for compassion and extending grace. I have learned that if I understand what you may be going through, that doesn't mean I have to agree with it. It just means that I have to understand it, which means that I might be able to feel what you feel, or I can definitely understand that you may feel that way.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's how
I
all
love
that
that. That's
works.
good, man. That's good. All right, we're out of time. We got one more question. This is our typical final question of the episode. It probably will be the shortest question as we have to answer today.
Okay.
Our CMV question: career, mission, and vocation. Temporarily, I'm taking everything off of the table that you've done up to this point. Not to diminish your work. This is just an exercise. We're taking
Okay.
everything that you've done off the table. If you ever did it before, it can't be your answer. If you thought about it, that's fine. It can't be a hobby or anything that you actually done, career, mission, or vocation wise. What is Troy doing right now, most likely? Get all those things off of the table. What do you think you'd be doing right now?
If I weren't doing those things, what would I be doing? I would be working in a service industry, helping or supporting people. More than likely, maybe a little bit more medical, only because
Really? Okay.
of what I'm really knowing today. Maybe more psychological. Maybe I would think about that. So I'm
Oh,
not
that
doing
makes
any. Not. I mean, I certainly help people, but not necessarily in that same capacity as caring for someone, or really taking care of their very specific needs. I think that's what I'd be doing.
Oh, I love that, man. It's a fantastic answer. So,
Thanks.
with the minute that we have left, if you don't mind, please share with the people how they can find you and your work, whether it be social media, websites, or what have you. Go right ahead, man.
Sure. The easiest is go to my website, which is drtroyhall.com. That's drtroyhall.com, drtroyhall.com. You can reach out to me. You can connect, send me a message, schedule an appointment, check out Cohesion Culture, all the great things that we're doing. Go through there. And I would like to say this, Mr. U, before we complete, and that is, I have a very simple way that I close out all of my programs, and it's with this mantra, that you don't have to know everything. You just need to be teachable.
There you go. I live by that. I just can't use it because you're already using it already. But thank you for your time on here, man. Definitely appreciate you being here. Fantastic episode. If you guys are watching and listening, of course, the episode is live on our YouTube channel, youtube.com @ They Call Me Mr. U. He will be live on the listening platforms within the next couple of hours or so. Thank you again for your time and watching this show and supporting Dr. Troy. Reach out to him, drtroyhall.com, I think he said. So just rewind it back a little bit. But check him out. He has some great insights. He can definitely help you out with your situation. So thank you again for your time here, Dr. Troy. And for all you guys watching and listening, have a fantastic day. We're out of here.